Welcome everyone to the study guide review video for the 7th grade Unit 5 quiz on adding and subtracting positive and negative rational numbers. Okay, question 1. Find the sum or difference for each expression. So for these, you are going to need to have to get all of them right to get full credit for this question. So we have negative 5 plus 11. Okay, you are going to be able to have access to a number line that goes from negative 10 to positive 10 for the quiz, but you can also always draw out a number line, and that's what I recommend you do. Alright, so for the first one, we are starting at negative 5, and then our change is that I'm adding positive 11, so I'm going to go up 11. Okay, so if I start at negative 5 and I go up 11, first I can go up 5 to get to 0. And then we ask ourselves, how much more do we need to go up if we have to go up 11 total and we've only gone up 5? That's going to be 6. So we're going to end here at positive 6. Okay, another way of doing this is if we're adding one positive and one negative number, then you can subtract the absolute values of the two numbers. 11 minus 5 is 6. And then you keep the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So 11 is bigger than 5. 11 is positive, so our answer is positive 6. But the visual kind of explains where that's coming from. Cool. All right, next one. We start at negative 6 and we subtract 4. Okay, so if I am starting at negative 6 below 0, and then I subtract 4, that means that the impact then is from negative 6, I'm going to go down 4. Okay, we could also think of this negative 6 minus 4. That's equivalent to negative 6 plus negative 4, because subtracting a number is equivalent to adding its opposite. So minus 4 is the same thing as plus negative 4. Either way, we're going to end up at negative 10. Because we're at negative 6, we get 4 more negative, 4 farther away from 0, and we end up at negative 10. All right, next we have negative 18 plus negative, oh, whoops, I gave you the answer. Next we have negative 8 plus negative 10. So I'm starting below 0 at negative 8. If I add a negative 10, then it means I go down 10. Okay, adding a negative 10 has the impact of getting more negative, smaller number, and I'm going to end up at negative 18. Okay, and when we're adding two numbers that are both negative, then we can just add the absolute values, 8 plus 10, to get 18, and then the answer is going to be negative. Because it's like from 0 to negative 8, we're going down 8, and then you go down 10. So in total, you're going down 18. Cool. Next, we have 7 minus a negative 5. So in this case, I am starting at 7. And then if I add a negative 5, that means I'm taking away a negative, or like taking away an anchor. And when you remove an anchor, it has the impact of making your ship go up 5. So subtracting a negative 5, that's like we're going up 5 from 7, right? We can rewrite this as 7 plus 5. Subtracting a negative 5 turns into addition, and we end up at positive 12. Okay, the other way we could model that with a number line is we can think of subtraction as the distance between the two numbers. So we have a number at 7, and we have negative 5. 7 minus negative 5 means, how do I get negative 5 plus what gets to 7? And that's going to be by adding 12. Okay, because you go up 5 to get from negative 5 to 0, and then you go up 7 to get from 0 to 7. So in total, you're going up 12. And finally, we have 3 minus 9. So we start at 3, positive 3. We subtract 9. That means we're going down 9. To get from 3 to 0, you're going to go down 3. And then you want to go down 9. You've gone down 3, so then you have to go 6 more down. and you're going to end up at negative 6. Also, we know that like 9 minus 3 is 6. So 3 minus 9 has to be the opposite of 6, which is negative 6. Cool. So no need to use a number line like in terms of getting the answer, like in terms of being required for credit. But there's like so many opportunities to make small mistakes here and then be like, oh, well, I feel like I knew it. I just like was rushing. So it's always a good idea to take your time while you're getting used to it, to draw the number line, make sure you're doing what you need to. Okay, cool. Question 2, complete the table to write an expression and the sum or difference that each number line represents. So the first one, the expression is given to you. So we have 0, right, starting at 0, and then we go left 3 to get to negative 3. So it's like our starting position is at negative 3. And then from there, we add 5, we move right 5. So this is like a positive 5. This is at a negative 3. So we have negative 3 plus 5, and we end up at 2. The sum is 2. Cool. For the second one, so starting here at 0, and then we're moving again to the left 3. So this is like at negative 3. And then we move to the left 5 spots. So, and we end up at negative 8. We could represent this 2 different ways. We could represent this as negative 3 minus 5, or negative 3 plus negative 5. Because those are equivalent expressions. Subtracting positive 5 is the same thing as adding negative 5. So either way works. For the third one, we're again starting at this negative 3, and then we're moving to the right. We end up at 5. We're moving to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So our expression would be negative 3 plus 8, which equals 5. And then finally, we again start at negative 3, and I'm going to the left 2. So I'm either subtracting 2 or I'm adding negative 2, and either way, I end up at negative 5. Okay, so you want to be able to understand these different number line models. Great. Question 3, which expression has the least value? Show your work. So you don't want to just like look at this and think you can get it in your head. I'm not saying you definitely can't do that, but you're gonna make mistakes that way, particularly with the level you guys are at now. You just need more practice before this becomes automatic. So you want to go through every option and figure out what it is equivalent to, what's the sum or difference, and then figure out which of those has the least value. So for negative 4 minus 19, that is equal to negative 23. On a number line, if this is 0, you start at negative 4, and then you're subtracting positive 19. You're going down 19. You're going to end up with a negative 23. 4 plus 19 is 23, and in both of these, the impact is it's getting more negative or going down. For the next one, we have positive 20 plus negative 7. So I'm starting above 0 at positive 20, and then adding a negative 7 means I go down 7, and I'm going to end up at 13. Okay, if I'm adding one positive and one negative number, we can subtract the absolute values to get 13, and then the sign is the whichever number has the greater absolute value. So 20 is bigger than 7, and 20 is positive. So the answer is positive 13. For C, we start at negative 13, and we add a negative 2. So we go down 2, and we end up at negative 15. And then finally, here we start at negative 7, and we're subtracting a negative 20. So when we subtract a negative number, that's equivalent to adding a positive. Taking away something negative, it's like taking away an anchor, makes the ship go up. So here I'm starting at -7 and then I go up 20. I'm going to go up 7 to get to 0 and then up 13 to get to 13. So this is going to be +13. Cool. So now that I've done that, I see that A is the one with the least value. It's the most negative. Cool. All right, question 4. Select all of the equations that are equivalent to -2.7 plus x equals -3.5. So for this, I would really just try to find x in each of them, and then figure out what's equivalent. So for the first one, -2.7 plus x equals -3.5. You're trying to figure out what number goes here in my x spot. So what do I add to -2.7 to end up at -3.5? And so you could kind of try to do it in your head. You would need a negative number because you're at -2.7. You end up at -3.5. So it's like, what do you add to get from -2.7 to -3.5? You have to add a negative number. And you could subtract them to figure out what that is. So 3.5 minus 2.7 is 0.8. So we have to go down 0.8. And you could also like check that if you're adding them together. So 2.7 plus 0.8, 7 plus 8 is 15. Carry the 1, you get 3.5. But they're both negative, so it's -3.5. Okay, the other way you could solve that first one is, this is an equation. X, you're adding a -2.72. So x is going to be whatever we get when we subtract these. You're finding the difference of these numbers. And that is this equation right here. So even if you don't like quite get it from the solving equation note, I'm going to go back to this answer choice and see how we can get the same thing. So now we're trying to get -0.8 for our answer. X equals -3.5, and if we're subtracting -2.7, we know that we're adding 2.7. So that means on my number line, I start down here at -3.5. I'm going to go up 2.7. So you're trying to figure out where do you land. And then to get that, because you're adding one positive and one negative number, you can subtract 3.5 minus 2.7. 15 minus 7 is 8. And you get 0.8. But in this case, the -3.5, that has the greater absolute value, meaning it's like farther away from 0. It's more negative. So when you add 2.7, you don't get all the way up to 0. So you get that your answer for that one is x equals -0.8 or -0.8. So that one is the same as the initial, so that's correct. Now we can check the others. This first one is also correct. That's what we had here. -3.5 plus 2.7 is -0.8, which is what we had before, so that's also the same. This one, 3.5 minus 2.7, that's going to be +0.8, or +0.8, so that's not correct. And for the last one, you have negative 3.5 minus 2.7. So we think about that on a number line. You start at negative 3.5 and then you're going down 2.7. So to get to the negative 3.5, you've already gone down 3.5, and then you go down another 2.7. You're going to end up adding these absolute values, and you'll get that this ends up at negative 6.2. So that is not correct. Okay. So in general for these questions, I mean, they're all related, and you want to it's helpful to think about how they're related, but I would just try to find what x is in each of them, or find the unknown value in each of them, and then choose the ones that are the same. Okay. Question 5, Amaya went on a hike. She started 20 3/8 feet below sea level and ended 40 5/8 feet above sea level. Model this on the number line and then determine how far she hiked up the mountain. So we're going to model where she started. If she started 20 3/8 feet below sea level, that means she's going to be at negative 20 3/8 because she's below sea level. And then she ended up here at 40 5/8 feet above sea level, so that's positive. And then we want to figure out how far did she go up. So there's a lot of different ways you could write this. Yeah, so I guess I'll write them out all. So one of the ways you could do it is you're trying to find the distance that she traveled, or the difference between these two numbers. So you could subtract the numbers 40 5/8 minus a negative 20 3/8. And then take the absolute value, meaning whatever you get, you should make it positive. If it's already positive, you keep it positive. So when you do that, 40 5/8 minus a negative 20 3/8 turns into plus 20 3/8. This is going to be a positive number, so I'll keep the absolute values for one more step, but it's going to stay positive. To add these mixed numbers, we can add 20 plus 40, and that's going to be 60. And then we can add the fractions, 5/8 plus 3/8, and that's equal to 8/8, or 1. So in total, when we add these together, we get 61 feet. The absolute value of 61 is 61. So that's going to be the answer. So that's one way of doing it. We'll move this here. You could have also done that in the other order. You could have started at negative 20 3/8, subtracted 40 5/8, and then that's going to turn into you're subtracting, you're at a negative number, and then you're subtracting. So it's like you're adding another negative, and then you'd get negative, the absolute value of negative 61, which would be 61. Or you can just sort of do it directly from the number line, which is basically what I did in the first version. It's like, this is my start down here. This is the end. So to get from the start to 0, we went up 20 3/8 feet. To get from 0 to the end, we go up 40 5/8 feet. So then in total, right, we have to go the 20 3/8 feet plus the 40 5/8 feet, which is 61. So that's really what we did here. Like, it's just at this step. You have to add the distances from 0, but like the absolute value of the distances. So I would really do it for the picture, but this is like a way of getting it more formulaically. There's a fraction, obviously. The fractions aren't going to be super tough on the quiz, but you do want to be able to add fractions. But right, like here I gave you them with the common denominator, so it'd be something pretty easy like that. Okay, so again, you don't need all of it. You do need the picture modeled. You need these numbers here. and then you need the final answer. All right. Question 5. This table shows temperatures in an Arctic city during one winter break. Complete the table. So first things first, let's make sure we understand how this table is set up. So we have the 5 days of the week, and then in blue, or sorry, not in blue, in the first column, we have temperature at midnight. This is my starting temperature. Then we have the temperature change from midnight to noon. And then we have our end temperature at noon. So we don't have to think about it this way exactly, but like you have the starting and then you add whatever the change is and it gives us the end location, end temperature. Sometimes the tables like are in different way, like set up differently. So you want to make sure you identify which is which in the table. And then you can see Monday is already done for us. We start at -18. You're then adding a +10, and that's equal to -8. Okay, so, right, we're basically doing the same thing for Tuesday, which you have to figure out. We're starting at -12, and then our temperature change is -13 degrees. So if you want to model that, we're starting at -12, and then we're going down 13. And you're going to end up at -25 degrees because it gets 13 degrees colder. Okay. I'm going to skip to Friday because it's the same setup, and then we'll come back for Wednesday and Thursday. So for Friday, I am starting at -13.1 degrees, and then I'm going up 18.3. So basically this one is saying what is -13.1 plus 18.3. Ultimately here, yeah, so we're adding a positive number and a negative number. So to get the sum, you can subtract the absolute values, 18.3 minus 13.1, and you'll get 5.2. And then in this case, 18 has a greater absolute value, and the 18.3, and the 18.3 is positive. So the final answer here is going to be positive 5.2 or 5 2/10 degrees. If we want to think about that in the picture, first I have to go up 13.1 degrees to get to 0, and then I have that 5.2 degrees left that I need to go up. So I end up at positive 5.2. Cool. Okay. For Wednesday and Thursday, we gotta do something a little bit different. So Wednesday, we don't have the starting temperature, but we have the amount of the change and the end. So what we can do is like, right, one way of setting this up would be with like an equation, but I'll write it this way. It's like we have our start, and then I'm adding 6.7, and then that equals 10.7. So if I want to find that starting location, I can subtract the two numbers, the end minus the change, and that's going to give me my original. So the start, I'm going to like minus 6.7 minus 6.7. That was going to be 4.0 or 4 degrees Fahrenheit. We can check this then. 4 plus 6.7 equals 10.7. So that's that way of doing it. I can also kind of draw it for us. So we don't know where we start, but we do know that we end at 10.7, and we do know that the change was that we increased by 6.7. So we're trying to figure out what is the start here. So it's, yeah, the same idea, right? If you're trying to figure it out, then you can start at the 10.7, subtract 6.7, and that's going to give you the start. It has to be 4.0. Okay, and then same idea for the last one, although, or for Thursday, although a little different. In this case, we have the starting temperature. So I'll kind of set this equation up. We have that we start at negative 15.2. And then we're supposed to add some change. And then that ends at negative 24. So we're trying to find the difference. We're trying to find the change. So on a number line, negative 15.2 is my start. Negative 24 is my end. So I'm trying to figure out what is the change that takes me from the start to the end. So one way of doing that is you subtract. You do the end minus the start to get the change. So, and that's related to the equation to figure out the change. Currently we have like the start plus negative 15.2. So we have negative 24, and then I'm going to subtract the negative 15.2. But then you have that subtracting a negative is equivalent to adding the positive. So you get negative 24 plus 15.2. And now we're adding a positive number and a negative number. So when you're adding one positive and one negative number, you can get the answer by subtracting the two numbers' absolute values. So we're going to have like 24.0 minus 15.2. Obviously, now that we know negative numbers, we know we can do 0 minus 2, but we're going to pretend we don't. Use this algorithm from elementary school. Turn the 4 into a 3, turn the 0 into a 10, and you do 10 minus 2 is 8. Then you try to do 3 minus 5, but we pretend that we can't. We turn the 2 into a 1, the 3 into a 13. 13 minus 5 is 8. And then we get 8.8. But since the negative 24, right, the 24 has a greater absolute value, it's bigger, 24 is bigger than 15.2, and that negative 24 is negative, then we're going to actually be going down negative, right, negative 8.8. Yeah, so that's one way of doing it. I think I sort of end up doing these like more from the number line. Clearly we have to be going down because we start at negative 15.2, right? And then it becomes more negative, so we have to go down. And then, right, with the decimal, it's a little bit harder, but I think I would do it like in my head as, okay, we're going down 0.8 to get to negative 16. So that's down 0.8. And then get from negative 16 to 24, we have to go down 8. So in total, we're going down 8.8. So any way you can come up with the answer is fine. Okay. Then we have 5.2. On Saturday, the temperature at midnight was 20 degrees Fahrenheit. At noon, the temperature was -7 degrees. How many degrees did the temperature change from midnight to noon? So in this, 20 degrees, that is my start. That is midnight. And we end at -7 degrees at noon. And you want to figure out the change. So as we did before, you're trying to find the distance between these numbers. I would just sort of more do this on the number line, right? We're going from 20 to -7. So to get from 20 to 0, we go down 20. And then from 0 to -7, we go down 7. So -27 degrees is the change, because you have to go down 27 degrees. But you could also subtract the end minus the start is going to be the change. So you could do -7 minus 20, which is -27. All right, there we go. Yeah, I mean, I think that it definitely has like all levels of difficulty on the quiz. The mild level questions is the first page, right? Because those are all with integers and the numbers are all nice and are just between -20 and +20. 3 and 4, a little bit trickier. Those are medium level questions because in addition to finding the sum or the difference, you have to sort of like do a couple steps to figure out the answer to the question. And then 5 and oh yeah, I was confused. These should all be 6. Sorry about that. I'll fix it by the time I give it to you. For question 6, you deal more with like decimals and fractions, right, for 5 and 6. But you can do it. You got it. Make sure you study hard though. Good job watching this.